What if you could lead more effectively and go home on time? Welcome to the Lightbulb. I'm Zoe Thompson, leadership and performance coach, and each week I bring you 3 practical insights from my work helping impact-driven leaders transform from reactive to intentional leadership so they can finish work on time and take guilt-free time off, creating success that feels as good as it looks. Let's jump in. Welcome back, episode 5. I've had a slow day today. It's been quite nice, actually. I do love a good, slow Sunday, especially when it's been a busy week, and appreciate slow Sundays mean different things to different people. But for me, I tried to have a lie-in, but I was wide awake quite early. But I've had a slow day, reading some chapters of my book, been getting the cleaning done in between, and yeah, I'm not going to lie to you, I have just watched a very cheesy chick flick on Netflix while I got a few bits and pieces done and did the washing up. So nothing particularly exciting, but a nice slow day just to re-energize a little bit, slow the pace, and yeah, I've still got to head out to the gym in a bit, but I wanted to record this episode for you first. So I've got some really interesting light bulbs to talk through with you this week. It's been a great week with clients. So it's interesting to pull out some different themes for the episode this week. So first up, I wanted to talk through the operating system upgrade. So this is what I mean by that. We as humans, we are creatures of habit. We have these patterns of habits and behaviours, the way that we think, the way that we respond to things, and we tend to repeat those patterns. And quite often, especially in a leadership position, we find out what works for us, and our brain recognises that works, and we like to repeat it. We like to do what we know works for us. And that's great for the role that we're in, until it changes. And when the role that we're in or the position in the company changes, we have to change the operating system. We have to change the way that we think about things. We have to change how we approach things. We have to change how we respond to things. And this kind of picks up a little bit on what we were talking about in episode 4, the difference between being on the dance floor and being up on the balcony, and being able to respond to things differently and being a more strategic leader. But we have to update our identity within this. And that's the first light bulb I wanted to pick up on this week. So this week, I've actually had a couple of different client calls, which on the surface level have been 3 very different challenges, 3 very different clients in very different positions, different industries, different levels. What they were presenting in each of the coaching sessions were very different challenges. But when it came down to it, when we peeled back the layers, as we do in the sessions, and we started to talk about what was the root cause, it was very similar. And I could probably go as far as saying it was the same problem. At its core, it was the same challenge. And that was that they are still working using an old operating system. So they're still trying to make what's worked for them before work in a new environment, but they're in a different situation, different environment. The challenges are slightly different, so they need to have a different response. And by trying to apply the old ways of doing things in this new environment, by having the same habits and the same behaviors, they're not getting the outcome that they got before because the situation and the environment has changed. So a lot of what we talked about in the coaching sessions was updating these old operating systems. What beliefs do they need to hold? What habits do they need to have? How do they need to recognize themselves? How do they need to see themselves for these new circumstances? And this impacts both emerging leaders and established leaders. And it happens all the time. And sometimes it does evolve quite naturally as we go into different situations and we respond to things differently. We do update the operating system because our brain recognizes what hasn't worked. Then when something does work, it uploads that system, or it uploads into the system. So it will happen naturally. But we can speed up that process. We can sit and think about, who do we want to be in this new role? Who do we want to be as a business owner, as a leader? How do we want to show up? What habits do we want to have? What behaviors do we want to have? And what do we need to believe is true for all of this to happen? So we want to make sure that we're not just waiting for new experiences to update the software. We want to almost preload that software so that we are ready to go. And we upgrade our skills all the time. We recognize that if we want to go into a new role, or if we want our business to grow, or we want our area of the business to grow, we recognize when we need a new skill set. We also need to recognize that we need to upgrade our identity as well. We need to upgrade the way that we think about things. We need to upgrade that mindset. So Lightbulb 2 is slightly different. And that's because I've delivered 2 workshops this week to young people, both around mindset, confidence, values, and purpose. Now, self-leadership is really important to me. So whilst the majority of the work that I do is around leadership, either in the corporate space and the business space, actually self-leadership is really important. And a lot of the pro bono charity work that I do is working with young people to support them with those self-leadership skills at the earliest possible age, because I don't think you can be too young to be learning this stuff. I don't think you can be too young to understand how your brain works, how your mindset can impact so much of your life, and that ability to be able to build your confidence, knowing how to do that, but also understanding what your core values are and that sense of purpose can make a huge difference at a really early age. And so I have delivered 2 workshops this week to young people, to people in their teens. It's coming up in client sessions with adults too. So understanding what your core values are will help you to understand when you're having challenges in your work, what is it that is out of alignment? Where are your workplace values or your colleagues' values out of alignment with your own, which is why there is a challenge? What is it that is within your core values that is creating those behaviors, the way you think, the way you feel, the way you behave, because you have a core value that is shaping and influencing that? Your level of confidence and your mindset will impact how you show up, how you engage with people, when you step forward and when you are holding yourself back. So when we talk about this in terms of self-leadership, especially with young people, understanding who you are, what's important to you, where is that sense of purpose, where can you find the confidence, or how can you build the confidence to step into that more? So important. But recognizing that is in your own self-leadership will also help you in the outward leadership. So we want to make sure that as leaders, when we have a team of people, that we understand ourselves as much as we're taking the time to learn and understand other people. You can't lead others effectively if you haven't mastered leading yourself. And a lot of people skip the self-leadership foundation work and then wonder why team leadership feels so hard. So this is really important. And if this is something that you want to explore a little bit more, please do feel free to reach out to me. I've got some resources that I can send you that will help get the ball rolling. But whether you are dealing with this as an adult or whether you have perhaps young people in your world who could do with some support on this, having these conversations is really important. Because quite often when we look at what's at the root of the challenges that we face, our values are often heavily influencing how we feel about things, and our mindset is also impacting how we see and that frame of reference and that viewpoint in what we are experiencing. So understanding what our values are, understanding what our sense of purpose is, and understanding how we can influence our mindset and confidence is huge. So my second light bulb for this week is don't skip the fundamentals. Don't skip the foundational work. Self-leadership is a key part of what makes you a really good leader. So the third point and the final point also skips into this a little bit too. So I had a conversation with a client this week about speaking up in meetings. Now, it would be very easy to jump straight into thinking that this is a confidence issue. Actually, it's a pattern of behavior challenge that we uncovered during the session. So this isn't a confidence issue in that the individual is questioning their ability within their job. It's not imposter syndrome. It's not lack of confidence. They're really good at what they do. They know they're really good at what they do. What they do recognize is that there is a level of importance placed on how they communicate their ideas. And so what happens is they get caught up in this delay while they're trying to shape those ideas in their mind, because when they communicate them, they want to communicate them very clearly, very succinctly, without waffling. And so whilst they're trying to get this straight in their mind so that they're able to present those ideas with confidence and do it confidently, somebody else is jumping in and sharing the same ideas, coming up with similar solutions. And they then feel that they've lost out. So part of it is a pattern of behavior, and that's in trying to get it straight, trying to get it right. That not perfectionism, but it sways towards that. But also it's the old behaviors of people who are either part of a team or perhaps at a team leader level, where we go to meetings. Quite often we wait until we are asked for our perspective. So we're used to contributing. We're not necessarily used to starting those conversations or bringing things into those conversations very early. We're waiting for permission. Ultimately, what I want you to take away from the conversation is you have earned your place at that table. You do not need to wait for permission to speak. You've already have that permission by sitting at the table. If you are sitting at the table, you have permission to speak. And you also have permission to speak in a way that is true to you. So if you are somebody who has an idea and you like to talk it through as you work it through, that is what is unique and authentic to you, and that is how you should show up in those meetings. If you are somebody who does prefer to reflect and then share, then you can still speak in that meeting. What you might want to do is say, I've got some ideas around this and it's still shaping in my mind. I'd like to come back to this, or I'd like to follow up with you after the meeting to discuss this. Don't hold those ideas in your mind. Everybody needs to hear your perspectives. That is why you are at the table. You are at the table because your opinion, your perspective, your ideas, your solutions are all wanted and needed. So you being at the table is your permission. So don't sit at that table waiting for permission or an invitation to speak. You are there for a reason. Staying silent to avoid looking foolish or through fear of judgment is what makes you invisible. So what I want you to take away from this is not to be present and yet not visible. It's really important. If you're thinking the idea but not saying it, and then you're watching someone else get credit for voicing the exact same thought, you have to question whether or not it's articulation, whether it's the identity that you don't see yourself as someone who does this. If you are not seeing yourself as someone who contributes, if you are not seeing yourself as someone who speaks up, puts ideas forward, who shapes the conversation, who starts the conversation, then the question is whether or not, and linking back to Lightbulb 1, whether you are coming still from an outdated belief, an old operating model. You need to see the value of your contribution. Your voice matters, and you can claim it at that table. So I'm going to say it one last time, because this is something that I think is really important to take away. You are at the table. You have earned your right to be at the table. If you are seated at the table, that is your permission to speak. You don't need additional permission whilst you are there. Those are my 3 points for the week. I would love to hear your thoughts on them, whether you agree or disagree. That is episode 5. I'm going to wrap it up there. We are at the 15-minute mark again, so I am doing my best to keep these nice and succinct so they are nice and easy for you to listen and take the takeaways away. But I hope you've had a great week and have a great week ahead. If you're on the mailing list, there will be a Monday morning email with these podcast links in. And don't forget, we've got 3 emails that come out a week with some reflection questions and intention questions to help you to plan and prepare and stay on track for an intentional and purposeful week. And those are your 3 takeaways for this week. Before you go, ask yourself, what's my light bulb moment from this? And now that I know what I know, what will I do differently? Choose one action, however small, and commit to it. That's how overwhelmed and reactive becomes aligned and intentional. Don't forget to subscribe, and I'll see you next week on the next episode of The Lightbulb.